Good afternoon and welcome to American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. My name is Andy Frisky, Senior Dream Curator here at DreamBank, and on behalf of our team, thank you for joining us. As we get started, we always like to learn where you're joining in from today and encourage you to share so in the comments. For those of you who have attended our virtual or in-person events in the past, welcome back. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'd love to share a little bit about DreamBank and take a moment to do so. So here at American Family Insurance, we believe communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. That's why we created DreamBank, an inspirational community destination and digital experience dedicated to dreamers everywhere. Our offerings are designed to help you celebrate the dream journey, overcome obstacles, and stay motivated. This event has been brought together in tandem with American Family Insurance Veteran and Military Business Resource Group, whose mission is to provide an inclusive and engaging atmosphere for veterans, military personnel, and those who are passionate about supporting them by providing opportunities to learn, network, volunteer, and support one another, both within the organization and across the communities surrounding it. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. So today we have Jeff Wiegand, the Vice President of Protective Services at American Family Insurance. And prior to joining American Family 5 years ago, he served in the United States Air Force. Sheldon Cuffie, who serves as the Chief Information Security Officer for American Family Insurance and joined the organization 2 years ago. He previously served in the Wisconsin Army National Guard. And Jake Wood, who's the co-founder and executive chairman of Team Rubicon. He's the author of Once a Warrior, How One Veteran Found a New Mission Closer to Home and Served as a Marine Corps Scout Sniper. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to our speakers.
Welcome, Jake. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Always good to even virtually come back and rejoin the great state of Wisconsin for a talk.
Yep. You know, especially this week leading up to Veterans Day, I can't think of a better way to start off all the ceremonies that our Veterans and Military Business Resource Group have scheduled for this month, but to start this week off with a conversation with you. So not only thanks for your time, but thanks for your service.
Absolutely. Likewise.
Yeah, same sentiment here, Jake. Very happy to be here with you today. So I'll jump right into the questions and, we'll get this DreamBank event started. And so I was really interested in your story and would like to just double click on that a little bit. And so where in your story does the willingness to serve begin?
Yeah, I think I was always interested in joining the military, even as a young boy. I had just a handful of experiences, moving around, it was with my dad's work. I lived briefly in Europe, when I was a young kid during the Cold War, and just, really had this, I think, this early desire to serve my country in some capacity. I ended up hitting the growth spurt in high school and becoming a fairly decent football player. And so was given the opportunity to come to the University of Wisconsin to play football. Had a full athletic scholarship from Coach Alvarez to come and play offensive line. And so I kind of put, my military career ambitions on hold. It didn't really seem like there was much of a sense of urgency to serve at that time period, because this was the spring of 2001. And obviously, we all know that the world changed a few weeks onto my time on campus. I woke up one morning, 9/11 happened, and that was obviously a real foundational moment for me. It was one that really forced me to rethink what I wanted to do with my life, with regard to service, with regard to my time at Madison. Ultimately, I went to practice that afternoon, and I got really good at making excuses for why somebody else should go and fight over the next 4 years. And then finally, right before my senior year on campus, Pat Tillman was killed in Afghanistan. And actually, just I think this last week would have been Pat Tillman's 45th birthday. I think I saw that online.
Absolutely.
And as a football player, that was a deeply impactful moment for me. It forced me to reflect on who I wanted to be and the type of life I wanted to live. And so I walked into my coach's office and told him that, I would be not taking my 5th year of eligibility, but that I would play that last season, my 4th year. And then I graduated shortly thereafter, and I walked into a Marine recruiter's office and said, hey, I want to join the infantry. And of course, the recruiter, this was 2005, he looked at me, like my eyes were crossed, wondering, why this college graduate was walking in to enlist in the infantry, but it just seemed like the right thing to do.
That's amazing. So I know Jeff wants to get in on the action here, but since we have one soldier, one Marine, and one airman on the DreamBank here, so why the Marines? What drew you to their mission?
Yeah, I'd always been, I think, in awe of Marines. I think that the way in which they spoke about themselves culturally always spoke to something inside of me. And really this notion of, it's a challenge and you have to earn the title, I think was something that again, it just really spoke to me. And so I'm too big to be a pilot. I'm not smart enough to be, an intelligence officer. I was just big enough and dumb enough to be a grunt, and I wanted to be the best. So I joined the Marine Corps.
Right. Very cool.
Hey, Jake, we have quite a few of our employees and members of the VMBRG that either veterans or currently serving in the armed forces, either as a reservist or a National Guard. I made the transition, 5 years ago, and I was interested in hearing your story. What was the success transitioning from the military to that private sector, and kind of what inspired, or what was that passion to go from one service to another service of a higher cause?
Yeah, well, I have to be completely honest. I didn't have too much of a plan, and my wife would also like to joke that I actually never left the Marine Corps. I got out of the Marine Corps in late 2009. I only spent 4 years in, but that entire 4 years that I was in, I was either training for or going to war. And I did 2 really hard combat deployments during the 2 bloodiest years of the war in the Anbar province, and then later in the Helmand Valley of Afghanistan. So it was a tough 4 years. And, when I got out, again, this is 2009, it's the shadow of the Great Recession. I always kind of felt like I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, but I knew that I couldn't, pack my car, drive up to the Bay Area in Silicon Valley, knock on Twitter's door and say, hey, I'm a Marine sniper. I just got back from Afghanistan. You should totally hire me for your tech company. It just didn't seem like it was going to translate. So, the plan, to the extent I had one, was to go to business school, get my MBA, and just give myself kind of 2 years to figure it out. But then, the Haiti earthquake happened about 60 days after I got out of the Marine Corps. And I was waiting those grad school applications to come back, and decided that I wanted to go and help, Haiti in that moment. And so, we started, I say, like by accident, Team Rubicon only 60 days after I got out. So that's why my wife likes to joke that I never actually transitioned, because I went from one life of service with like-minded people, that military mindset, into Team Rubicon, which was a new life of service, like-minded people, mission-oriented military mindset. And so I never really found myself in that dead space in between, where veterans either sink or swim. And we've seen all too many, I think less so recently, but early in the wars, we saw a lot of veterans get out of the service, not understand what life back home was going to be like, and saw them flounder. I think a lot's been done to catch them on their way out, to give them all the on-ramps they need into private employment, into education opportunities, all the medical resources that they need. But I never myself necessarily had to struggle with that, because I found myself on a new mission right away.
It's great. And I tell you, very inspiring. Here you are graduating from UW, and you enlist in the Marine Corps. And then following that, while doing your MBA, you're still drawn to that service, after the unfortunate incident in Haiti. So once again, thanks for your service.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And so, you talked a little bit about how Team Rubicon got started, and I just had a realization, you go from being a soldier, but actually I was a soldier. You're a Marine. I will mix that up again. Sorry. But, you go from a Marine to basically becoming an entrepreneur. It's still connected to, some skills and experiences that you have. But what was that like? Because it's more than just arriving, boots on the ground, and getting the job done. I'm sure there was, there's financial resources, there's other complications that you have to endure. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I ended up getting my MBA the old-fashioned way, the school of hard knocks. Building a company and learning it all on the fly. And it was, it was challenging. Like I said, this was the shadow of the Great Recession. Trying to start and build and scale a nonprofit, in that economic environment was almost a suicide mission. But what I found was, one, I'd had a great foundational education at UW-Madison. I graduated from the business school there. So I at least kind of sort of knew how some of these things were supposed to work. But then I had all the lessons that I learned in the military, the ability to pull together and build a team, lead a team, to manage risk, not just the type of risk that we saw in disaster zones, but the risk that you inherently incur building a business, how to motivate and inspire people to follow a vision. And then finally, I think probably the most underappreciated skill that veterans come out of the military with: grit. We were too dumb to fail. We refused failure. We took all of the natural obstacles that any entrepreneur or business leader, encounters along the way, and we just took them on the chin, and we kept going, waking up the next day to get at the grindstone again. And so I think that's one of those skill sets, again, that I think is dramatically underappreciated for people that are coming out and looking to have impact in any organization.
That's awesome. So that connection to portable skills, right, that folks coming out of the military have and are very much applicable to the corporate space and other, especially as an entrepreneur. So Lee, kind of pulling on that further, when I was reading about Team Rubicon, it's easy to focus on, the impact and what you're doing for others, but can you tell us more about the importance of continued service, and then the dual impact of Team Rubicon, and how does that connect with what you do with the purpose and mission of veterans?
Yeah, well, before I go any further, don't let me presuppose that anybody in your audience knows what Team Rubicon actually does. So what we do, we started after the Haiti earthquake. I helped organize a team of veterans and doctors to go down there and help treat survivors of that earthquake. And really just this notion was developed that we could build a better disaster response organization by repurposing the skills and experiences of military veterans to work in humanitarian contexts. And over the course of the last 12 years, that's what we've done. We've scaled about 150,000 volunteers, deployed on nearly 1,000 operations around the globe, both domestically and internationally, responding to tornadoes and earthquakes and wildfires and civil wars and global pandemics. And so what Sheldon is referring to is, yes, we have found the way to build a better mousetrap. These men and women are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan and Vietnam and the Gulf War with tremendous skill sets and experiences that we can repurpose. But one of the unintended outcomes of the work that we've done that we didn't anticipate was that these men and women were getting as much out of it as they were putting in. They were filling these voids that they had, whether they knew it or not, voids of purpose, voids of that band of brothers and sisters, that void of identity that so many lose when they take that uniform off for the last time. And walk into a new job that may not have that same mission orientation that they had while serving their country. And so it's been a really powerful, I think, driver of a lot of our work. We talk about the organization have a singular mission, disaster response, but dual impact, helping these survivors and helping these veterans in so many powerful ways. And it's been remarkable to see so many of these men and women transform through their service with Team Rubicon. I don't doubt that I am a different human being because of the last decade of my service, serving in communities all across this country, rich and poor, Rust Belt, urban, some left behind. It's given me a whole new perspective on life, and again, filled that desire for me to continue to be of service.
Yeah, that's what I find so exciting about that dual role mission. Not only helping those that are in need, but then, it's rallying those forces. And I think that's when I look at for everyone that may not be familiar with the military, all the different services have different core values. Yeah, they resonate around the same themes, but when you look at what the veteran, the military can bring to any organization, it's the resiliency, being agile, being adaptable, but most importantly, that service before self. I think you've shown that in the Marines, and then with Team Rubicon, how do we serve others and at all times? And that's what I like to maybe switch gears on, is between American family, that's about our customers, our people, and our communities. And how do we see alignment? Maybe how do we, protect those dreams? And do you see the similar alignments between Team Rubicon and American Family about, especially with our community engagement initiatives?
Yeah, well, I think you frame it well in how you talk about, a duty to your people, your customers, and your communities. I've had the good fortune of working with a lot of insurance companies, over the last decade. And what's always struck me is just how mission aligned insurance companies are. I think people really hold dear the opportunity that they have to help secure, the financial futures of their customers. And I have seen firsthand, in the aftermath of disasters, claims associates, walking through those storm ravaged communities, hand in hand with customers and non-customers alike, helping them to ensure them that, hey, everything's going to be okay. The worst is behind us and we're going to help you rebuild. I mean, that is such a powerful moment. And I think, the best companies, American Family included, really drive home towards this idea of maintaining those dreams. For so many Americans in our communities, their dreams are tied to those physical assets that they live in every single day, those homes, those automobiles that take them to work. And when those things are ravaged and destroyed, those dreams may seem shattered. One of the things that Team Rubicon often said was that we were there to serve people on their worst day, right? That worst day is that moment after a storm when they wake up and they see everything that they've worked for, laid bare, ravaged by Mother Nature. And it's in that moment when you can make a difference in somebody's life, a profound difference in somebody's life. And so it's always been inspiring for me to see that, and I know that, Team Rubicon, our values, the way that we approach those moments, those customers, those communities with compassion, empathy, and providing them dignity and hope for a better tomorrow, there's total alignment there.
And I'm sure that Sheldon and I think very similar with this, that there's nothing that replaces troops on the ground with our troops, and getting out in the field is so important. I don't like sitting in the office, like being engaged. And what a better way to be able to help those in need is having boots on the ground.
Yeah, there's nothing that will ever replace that human interaction in those moments of need. Insurance companies have done a great job of building better tools and allowing you to process claims through a phone and an app and drones, like we were talking about before we actually went live today. But at the end of the day, there's got to be a human on the other end of that tool who is ready to pick up the phone or to get in the car and to show up in that moment to help, frankly, just be an ear, to solve the problem, to convey that sense of humanity. Nothing will ever replace that.
Yeah, it's hard to replace that passion and empathy to a virtual environment. I agree with you there. Sheldon, over to you. Let me ask Sheldon a question. Let's talk about your current role and your desire to serve, and how have you used what you learned in the Army to what you are doing now in American Family.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I got into cyber about 10 years ago, but in technology, I always realized that I was the one person that would deal with the antivirus or the protection schemes, the encryption, the stuff that really nobody else wanted to deal with. But in listening to Jake here a little bit, I just had this realization that, cybersecurity is my way of serving, but in the civilian sector, and in a very different way, because it obviously, between Jeff and I, we're both responsible for protecting buildings and people and, digital assets. But, that realization of I'm actually continuing that those values of duty, honor, and country, just in a little bit of a different way. But now I'm helping inspire and protect the dreams of our customers of American Family. So that's incredibly powerful stuff. And, as I think about that really does come back to, I think about what we do, Jeff, and would love to hear a little bit about, what you deal with, because you actually, I'm in this really cool building in Madison. I'm in this is called our rec room. You can see there's a green space and it's colorful. And, this is where folks can come to kind of hang out and chill for a little bit. But Jeff, you have an enormous responsibility of protecting this campus. And, tell us a little bit about that and how that links to, your time in the service as well.
What Sheldon, we can't simplify it to say it's cyber and physical, because the risks that we're concerned about cross between that space, very quickly. Sheldon, I know that you sent out an article about how to keep your families safe at home, just like you're doing that in the cyber world, which is very concerning given the social media, the IT security, the ransomware. Similar to what you're doing in the cyber, we're doing in the physical. And to me, it's more about overall safety and security, and it's about incident response. So how do we proactively identify risk and mitigate that risk? But there still can't mitigate all risk. And how do we, identify and intervene before it has a greater impact? But still, there will be incidents. So how do we, recover from those, or first off, mitigate the risk from that and recover? So for me, it's less about security and more about risk management. And the more that we can focus on this all domain risk, because it's a concerning environment. If we look at all the different risks, from natural disaster, severe weather, any type of infrastructure outage, those might be unintentional, but some of the intentional risks, ones that you deal with every single day on the IT security side, what we do on the physical security side, to make sure that we have a well integrated team. And that's what I'm very proud to lead, is a very well integrated team of intelligence analysts, investigators, to mitigate their risk. But we have an incident response team. When there is an incident, how do we mitigate that impact on our people, on our assets, and how do we make sure that it minimizes on our business operations? And I think that's what.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, I think you hit on something that's really powerful there. I think veterans feel this obligation to be proactive in protecting not just themselves and their families, but their broader communities. And I think, I've certainly seen that a number of times over the last decade with Team Rubicon, but I think this really, for me, came to bear during COVID. I saw so many of my veteran peers step up, and after securing whatever it was that their family needed. If we think back 18 months ago, when people started to stock up on food and people were afraid to go to the grocery stores, so many of the Marines I served with, not even in Team Rubicon, I saw them going out and figuring out how can I go out and get food for my elderly neighbors? How can I go out and make sure that the single mother down the street who's got 3 young children at home has what she needs in order to survive this shelter in place rule that we just encountered. So there's just this powerful, I think some veterans would call it a sheepdog mentality that they bring, that, it sounds like both of you all are harnessing in the good work that you're doing. And it's so inspiring, I think, to hear it, going beyond the halls of American Family and into, okay, how can the employees of American Family stay safe for their families when they go home? It's incredible. It's just reflective of the attitude, I think, that we bring.
Absolutely.
Jake, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sheldon.
Yeah, go. No, I just want to add on to that. Just, when you think about, at least when I was in the service, I think my commanders cared about me, not just when I was on duty. They cared about, the full person, and if my needs were being attended to, right? And so that's something that I don't think people think about very often. They think of military as command and control without the empathy, but there's definitely that part in the equation, which just feeds into leadership. And so I wanted to pivot into there, and Jeff talked about this a little bit, is our connection to our catastrophe response teams. The honor that our employees have with showing up to help people when they need it the most, our customers. And so that's one of the things I wanted to try to parallel with Team Rubicon and, get your perspective on what's one of the biggest gaps you've seen in trying to volunteer and provide this capability, and then how do veterans play into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first started responding to domestic disasters, because we got our start for the first 18 months focused only internationally, we didn't know what we didn't know. I am entirely capable of acknowledging that we were completely ignorant of what the domestic disaster landscape looked like. And so, we waded into this, I think, as cocksure as any group of Marines would, and quickly learned just how much we had to learn about the space. There's a couple of things I'd say. First, I think volunteers in a disaster context have the word volunteer is almost like a 4-letter word for most professional emergency management officials. They see them as untrained, undisciplined, unskilled, poorly equipped, and incapable of coordination of activities. And so as we first saw that this was kind of the mindset for most professional emergency services officials, we set out to build the most modern, the most capable, the best trained, and the most best equipped volunteer organization on the planet for that, purpose built for those domestic response operations. And I think, that involved us taking that military discipline in our approach to it, adopting the professional best practices, namely things like the National Incident Management System and the Incident Command System to manage our operations. That made us interoperable with all local agencies when we got on the ground. So we started to speak their language. We started to take this real humble approach post-disaster, basically offering our services, standardizing those services so that we could have consistent and professional outcomes, regardless of what the hazard was that we were responding to or where it was located. But beyond that, we immediately saw that nothing lays bare the economic inequality in this country like a disaster, right? If we think that there's the haves and the have-nots, if you're in that first group, the haves, you're going to have good insurance. You're probably not going to be living in a floodplain. Your home is going to be well constructed, and so it's going to be more fortified against the hazards that you're facing, more resilient structurally. If you're in that second group, if you're in the have-nots, chances are, if you own the residence that you're living in, it's probably a multi-generational ownership, which means that you may or may not have a lien against it, which then probably means you might not have it insured if you don't have a mortgage against it. So your most valuable asset, the only source of wealth that you have, probably has no insurance against it. It's more likely to be unfortified. It's more likely to live in places like a floodplain that are vulnerable to storms. And so we had this understanding that these storms come in, and one group is going to be more resilient in the aftermath of it. They're going to better be able to repair, to rebuild, to get back on their feet, to get back to work, to get their kids back in school. And then you have this other one who's going to be, probably descend into a deeper cycle of poverty. And so we really focused our efforts early on making sure that we could quickly identify which community was actually in most need of our assistance after a storm and direct our services there. And what was interesting, to put this, bring this back full circle to the insurance industry, one of the first big corporate sponsorships that I received or was able to broker was with a top 5 property and casualty insurer. And I remember sitting down with a member of their executive team and the head of their foundation, and I said, "I'd like you to give us $1 million. And with that $1 million, I promise you, we're not going to help a single policyholder of your company." And they kind of looked at me like, "Why would we give you $1 million?" I was like, you're going to give us $1 million because every time your catastrophe claims teams go out after a tornado or a flood, they're inundated by people that they can't help because they have no business reason to do it. And that breaks your team's hearts every single time. Because at the end of the day, they're humans and they want to help those people. We're going to do it for them. And so, there was just this really powerful understanding that, there was this pay it forward opportunity. And what's interesting is that's the pitch I've used with every insurance company since, and every single one of them gets it, right? Because that's the type of people that you have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And before we're talking about, I think we are all hardwired as part of our DNA. We have plans and we always have contingency plans. So on your missions in the Marines and then with Team Rubicon, and then as an entrepreneur, can you tell me a little bit your thought process of how you always, plan for the worst, hope for the best, but you have a contingency plan to be able to navigate almost out of any unforeseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be best to invoke probably one of the best thinkers of the 20th century, Mike Tyson, who said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Planning is obviously very important, and we've invested a lot at Team Rubicon in our planning process, and we've got incredible operational planners, we've got incredible analysts, we've invested in our systems and our data and all of those things. I think at the end of the day, like I said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. You can say that 100 different ways. What matters in the end in these moments of chaos, in the military, we call them VUCA environments, right, is leadership and organizational culture, right? So starting with culture, my definition of culture is it's what guides decisions in the absence of orders. So when you send people out into that chaotic environment, when there's no plan for what people are facing, it's resource constrained, it's information constrained, it's dynamic, rapidly shifting, you're not going to be able to direct every move they have, and they're not going to have a playbook for it. So how do you consistently get them to the right decision? It's culture. And then, culture helps to deliver leadership. It's the type of leaders that can inspire people to follow them in those moments, that can, cut through that complexity and ambiguity, bring clarity, help drive a common understanding, and ultimately motivate people to move forward, and everybody's moving in the opposite direction. That's what we have really relied on at Team Rubicon. And it's been, my philosophy for building and leading teams ever since I had to lead, 13 Marines in Anbar province, the triangle of death, was the only thing I could rely on.
That's really powerful. And I'm going to take that part and clip it and just watch it back over and over again. Because what you just described there is really your commander's intent, right? It just helps folks fill in the blanks of, here are my beliefs and here's how we're going to move out. But knowing that you have a culture that's connecting you, and those shared values that are tying you together. So really powerful to hear you say that. And so how do you think you talked about sending folks into these catastrophes? They have to be well equipped. They have to know how to interoperate. I personally hadn't thought about that with public authorities. But how has that changed you in the disasters you've responded to, and how that's changed your mindset over the years?
Yeah, I think if I look back over the last decade, I've certainly changed as a leader. I think I've changed as a human. I'll start with as a leader. I have had to evolve as a leader countless times in the decades since I left the Marine Corps. I think the Marine Corps is an incredible leadership school, and I learned one, style of leadership, and and there are lessons there I'll take with me for the rest of my life. But you can't lead, you can't lead a business like a Marine sergeant, and so and then you can't lead a $50 million organization like you lead a $5 million organization. And so I've just constantly had to reinvent myself as a leader. It's required, I think, a lot of humility along the way, a lot of self-reflection, and surrounding myself with people who are willing to tell me when I need to evolve. And I was maybe the only smart thing I did early was surround myself with smart people who were willing to tell me, when I needed to change. But then as a person, I count myself as fortunate that I have been a witness or a participant to some of the most unfortunate situations on the planet. I have, if you think of the worst catastrophes of the last decade, chances are I was at most of them, and on the front lines of that suffering. And that's an exhausting line of work. It was emotionally and physically and mentally exhausting, but it gave me this perspective for the world. It helped me to understand the incredible fortune that I've had growing up in the communities I grew up in, going to the schools that I went to, being given the opportunities that I did. It has helped me to better appreciate some of the historical inequities that we see in our country. And I don't know that I would have been able to come to terms with some of those things had I not seen them firsthand, again, laid bare, by these storms. And so I count myself as, again, fortunate for witnessing those unfortunate moments, because I think it's made me a more compassionate, empathetic American. And and so I think money can't buy those life lessons.
Love that. Absolutely.
Jake, you're also transitioning to a new endeavor, but more in the executive chairman role. What excites you, in that role, or the future of Team Rubicon? And also, for those who are joining in, how can people, be part of Team Rubicon and contribute to this very important dual role mission?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I did this last year transition into a new role as executive chairman and appointed a new CEO. It had always been the plan that I was going to hand the reins off to someone. I believe that organizations are like any living organism. They have to constantly evolve, and if they're not evolving, they're slowly dying. And so that includes the people that are leading them. Like I mentioned, I've evolved a lot as a leader. I think I had an understanding as we were emerging from COVID what the next decade for Team Rubicon looked like, and I just wasn't sure I was ready or willing to evolve into the next iteration of CEO that the organization needed. I also knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur again. And, the window to be able to do that starts shrinking. The window to responsibly do that starts shrinking once you start having kids. So it was an exciting time for me to step out and start something new, which I'm really, really excited about what we're doing now. I think that the organization, Team Rubicon has an incredible future. We are going to continue to scale. We're going to continue to refine what we're doing and how we're doing it. We're going to scale our programs more back internationally without taking our focus off the work that we're doing here domestically. And so I'm just really excited for that. And you asked the question, how can people get involved? Really two ways. We're a nonprofit organization, so we only are able to do the work we do because of the good graces and generosity of people who support it financially. And so I'd encourage you, as we head towards the end of the year, if you're going to be making contributions, to consider Team Rubicon. But then, we always need volunteers. And I've already seen in the chat some people pop in and say that they've been volunteering with the organization recently. I think I specifically saw something with regard to our Afghan resettlement efforts. And it's important to point out that you don't have to be a military veteran to be involved. Anyone who's willing to serve their country and community can sign up and join, and we'll make sure you're trained for it.
And what is a gray shirt? Can you just explain what that is?
Yeah. A gray shirt is like a Marine. It's the most finely trained human being on the planet. A subtle dig at my airmen and soldier compatriots here. No, that's the name that we give for our volunteers. It's taken from the uniform, the iconic uniform they wear, which is a gray uniform T-shirt, very simple, very utility uniform. And it's what I think is one of the most powerful things we've done with our culture is it's just become this shared identity that is really powerful for our volunteers who identify as it. It has really served to be a unifying element of our culture. So I would encourage you all to get out there and earn your gray shirt.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm making my commitment now to become a gray shirt if you'll take me.
I love it.
I'd like to challenge, all my colleagues to do the same.
Let's do it. Come on, Colonel Jeff, get out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll be right beside you, Jeff. And so Jake, I was driving through Milwaukee this weekend, and I saw a gray shirter up on a billboard, and advertising, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. And so you've talked about scaling. You're getting the word out. Folks are really starting to connect with the mission of Team Rubicon, and so you've accomplished so much already as a Marine, as a startup entrepreneur, as a CEO, now an executive chairman. What's your next dream?
Yeah, well, about a half year ago, I incorporated a new company, and we just raised some venture capital money, and we are setting out to build a platform to democratize philanthropy for the masses. And we're excited to build a solution for companies to decentralize their corporate philanthropy, provide a personal foundation for every employee, and to make charitable giving a component of their compensation moving forward. Our vision for this company that we're calling Groundswell is that we'll build a platform that'll move $1 trillion of philanthropy into the charitable sector, and a future in which every solution is funded and every problem is solved. So in the spirit of make no small plans, we haven't raised a single dollar on the platform yet. So $1 trillion seems like a ways away, but we'll start our long march towards that soon.
I'll tell you, my old days, I used to fly at 50,000 feet, but right now I feel like I'm flying at 100,000 feet, top of the world, because this is very inspiring. Thank you.
Of course. let's get American families signed up.
Yep, absolutely. Should we, Sheldon, do you want to transition? I've seen some of the questions pop up, or do we want to bring Andy on and see if there's questions from the participants joining in?
Yep, lots of praise coming in for you, Jake, and Team Rubicon. A few questions here. So this first one is, first of all, thanking Team Rubicon for leading the donation drive to assist Afghan families at Fort McCoy. Can you talk a little bit about what that volunteer experience looked like and how Team Rubicon will continue to serve those refugees?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I know I saw a woman in the chat who indicated she had volunteered, so thank you. Obviously the situation in Afghanistan was troubling for anyone who served over there, frankly, it should have been troubling for any American, regardless of whether you served on the ground in Afghanistan. For me, it was deeply troubling and very emotional. And it was heart-wrenching to see those Afghans, in addition to the Americans who were scrambling to get out, struggling to leave a country that they knew was going to change overnight. Fear in their eyes, passing their children over Jersey barriers, hoping that they might be able to get their children snuck out for a chance at a better life. And so it was really powerful when I've got a phone call. Every once in a while a number pops up on my phone and I know it's either the White House or the Pentagon, and because the switchboards are all the same. And it was a phone call first from the White House, from someone in the Office of Public Engagement there, asking what Team Rubicon might be able to do. And then maybe an hour later, a call from the Pentagon, and an assistant secretary asked, hey, we're going to have 50,000, this was early still, they had no idea what the number was going to be, 50,000 people we're going to have to resettle, and we're not built for this. Can Team Rubicon help? And, it was one of those moments where, reflecting back on 10 years, it was powerful that when the Pentagon had a problem that it needed help solving, that it called Team Rubicon. So that was really validating and obviously a source of great pride. But, that sentiment vanished within about 3 seconds, and it was just time to get to work. So we immediately dove into it. We offered up a variety of different services, but what we've really taken the point on is first building a software platform that could help to manage the chaos. We're a very, very tech forward, tech savvy organization. We've got an incredible CTO. And second, managing the donations that we're going to be pouring in across dozens of facilities across the country, shirts, shoes, backpacks, books, computers, tablets, food, all of those things. And tens of millions of items that we have cataloged, processed, sorted, and delivered to Afghan families across roughly a dozen military installations. And it's been incredibly powerful, for these men and women, many of them who have served in Afghanistan, to be able to, in their own lives, kind of write the final chapter for what their experience in Afghanistan was. Because frankly, we didn't get the final chapter we wanted over there. So we might as well done our best to make sense of it over here. And I know that it's been a really powerful opportunity for a lot of people. We're going to continue to support it. We have plans to support it through the middle of next month. We're looking at potentially extending that support deep into next year. It's really, again, it's a very fluid situation. It's obviously very dependent on the DoD, as well as the resettlement agencies that are moving these Afghans into communities. I'm inspired by recent reports that the resettlement agencies are going to kind of short circuit their own policies and allow clusters of veterans to sponsor families and get them moved off and into communities faster. I think we need to be thinking outside the box like that. So we'll do everything that's asked of us for as long as people are asking, to answer your question.
Thank you for that, Jake. I can only imagine what it would feel like to get a call from the White House or the Pentagon. And I can imagine in the same breath too, right? That moment was very brief and goes away. And then the mentality of time to get to work, getting to work kind of kicks in. This next question is surrounding the name Team Rubicon. And just if you could talk about how kind of that was determined and that came to be.
Sure. So, when we were first going down to Haiti after the earthquake, remember we just a ragtag group of guys, half of whom had never met the other before. We weren't a nonprofit. We weren't a charity. We were nothing. Again, just a couple of guys with backpacks looking to go down. And right before we left, we also remember that we were in the military. So you didn't go on a mission unless you gave that mission a name. and if it didn't have a name, then you didn't do it, right? It was kind of the mentality. So we had this quick huddle before we left the night before. We said, all right, we got to give this team a name, or this operation a name. And quick history lesson: the Rubicon was this river in ancient Rome that is the river that Julius Caesar crossed when he marched on Rome to overthrow Rome. And as a result, the phrase "crossing the Rubicon" has come to mean crossing the point of no return. And so we knew we could fly to the Dominican Republic. We weren't sure if we could actually cross the border into Haiti, but we knew that there was this body of water along the Haitian-Dominican border. And if we were able to get across the border, that would kind of serve as our Rubicon for that mission. And so, the name stuck, and it's been with us ever since.
I love that. A couple more questions here, Jake. This next one, you talked a little bit about this. I'll go ahead and read the question verbatim. So first of all, thanking all three of you for your service and for the time and thoughts today. So you talked, asking you, Jake, what's next now that you're no longer CEO, which I know you discussed, but this next part I think is really important. How do you see the lessons from Rubicon assisting you as you move forward?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I mentioned that, I'm now running this venture-backed startup called Groundswell full-time. And I'm excited to do it over again. I got a bunch of bumps and bruises and scrapes building Team Rubicon over 11 years. And I'm excited to apply all those lessons in a new context with a new mission, build a new team, create a new culture, but also do something that's wildly different. We're building a very complicated technology platform, and we're going to be building an enterprise sales team, and it's going to be nothing like what we did at TR. And so I'm just excited to figure out, what did I actually learn about building a company, building a team, and executing a vision, and see if we can't catch lightning in a bottle twice. That said, I'm obviously still one foot in the door at Team Rubicon as executive chair, and I'm eager to really continue to serve that company or that organization from a different perspective. To zoom out a little bit and help our new CEO, Art Delacruz, who, like Jeff, flew airplanes, but for the Navy. And help to make him as successful as he can be as he helps lead the organization to the next chapter. I'm really eager to play that role.
Oh, Andy, you're on mute.
The mute button catches everybody. This next question comes from Katie. With the need to respond to disasters so quickly, is Rubicon able to pull in Americorps teams for extra hands?
We have not typically worked a lot with Americorps. We participated in a program called Americorps Vista probably 7 or 8 years ago. But I think you hit it on the head. What we do is very complex. Rapid response is really what we do. We do have long-term recovery programs where we have opportunities to work in partnership with organizations like Americorps a little bit more. But for our core mission, it's mostly organic assets and volunteers.
And then building on that, but through a slightly different lens. This next one states that I read that Team Rubicon was on the ground in Joplin, Missouri in 2011 after one of the most significant storms American families supported. How does Team Rubicon partner with employees from insurance companies to provide relief to the impacted community?
Yeah, I was there in Joplin. Short anecdotal story. I was actually tornado chasing with my wife 150 miles away when that storm hit. My wife is a meteorologist, and we had flown into North Texas about 3 days prior to go out with storm chasers. So, never a dull moment in the Wood household. But it was good because it meant that I was effectively almost pre-positioned to go in there and help our teams. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think that what we have found is that, like us, insurance companies are there for a mission, and you got a job to do. And so there's not a lot that we often find ourselves doing with insurance companies, because you're out there and you're helping your customers, right? You have your catastrophe claims teams out there, and there isn't time to run around with Team Rubicon. To that extent, we do a lot of collaboration and information sharing across all of our insurance industry partners in those moments. And if it happens to be near a large employee base, like a non-claims department employee base, then of course we're going to get associates out there from the corporate mothership to come out and volunteer. And I know there's an individual on our team, Brian Calcagno, former Army helicopter pilot, who is in charge of liaising with American Family to ensure that you guys know exactly what you can do to be involved in that way.
Jake, thank you so much for that. And gentlemen, thank you all for sharing your time and your insights with us all here today. What a great session. And Jake, something that really resonated with me is your pitch to those insurance companies about, when you're asking for donations and really not affecting their bottom line, but being able to serve, that other part of society that may not have insurance policies through the company. I think that's very powerful. Here at DreamBank, we truly believe in the power of dreams and celebrate that our community is made up of fellow fearless dreamers. And as we wrap up, I have one last question for all three of you. What is one piece of advice that you have for someone who is pursuing a dream right now? And we'll start with Jeff, if that's okay, just to make it easy.
All right, sounds good. First off is that I want to make sure don't miss this opportunity on behalf of all of us to thank veterans for their service. Veterans Day is this Thursday, but it's a day that every day we should be thanking, veterans and military members for the service, for defending, for our freedom. And the same thing for our first responders and those in emergency management, all the men and women that serve in or out of uniform to keep us safe every day. So thank you for your service. For me, I can be pretty intense, pretty focused, pretty mission driven, and often chasing the dreams rather than living the dreams and, living in the moment. I love to, not just fly from point A to point B, but figure out where point C is, how to get there. But that can drive me to be chasing the dream rather than living the dream. And, the one quote that I probably won't get it right, but it's not about, waiting for the storm to pass, but about dancing in the rain. And that's something that I'm still trying to learn every day, is that how do I, enjoy the journey, not chasing the dream, and live the dream that I'm thankful to have every single day.
That's pretty amazing, Jeff. And we did not coordinate our answers, and I don't have a better one to come up with on the fly now. But my variation of that is being present in the moment.
Yeah.
And ensuring that, the people that you are with, that, you're not just driving on an outcome, you're not just achieving a mission, it's all about that team. And it's the team that matters, the people that matter, the culture that matter. So that's something I'm just absolutely intent on almost every day. I don't always get it right, but I'm, keep pushing towards that dream that we have these hardcore, hard charging teams that just are highly engaged and, just are delivering on the mission that our customers deserve and expect.
Yep.
And then at the risk of contradicting Jeff, yeah, I mean, Jeff, I think that they both hold true, right? You can be too focused on the next hill to capture it, not appreciate what you have. I think on the other hand, you have a lot of folks who have dreams and are never going to start moving towards them. And so my advice would be you got a dream, what are you waiting for, right?
Yep.
Get moving. So it's what I would tell people out there.
Hey, Jake, once again, really appreciate your time. I really wish we could have done this in person.
Over a spotted cow.
Yep, yes. Absolutely. So go Badgers, and anytime you come back to University of Wisconsin, please stop in and join us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Happy Veterans Day to you both.
All right.
So as we wrap up, I want to give another thank you to the VMBRG at American Family Insurance, especially Cheyenne Castillo behind the scenes for making this event possible. And to all of you who tuned in, we thank you for joining us. We look forward to continuing to learn, grow, and dream together. You can learn more about upcoming DreamBank events and content designed with your dreams in mind at amfam.com/DreamBank and by connecting with us on our social channels. And on behalf of American Family Insurance and DreamBank, we look forward to hosting you again soon. Until then, keep dreaming fearlessly.